Tap. A sharp metallic tap on the back of his head. It had been happening for 5 years, every day, without fail. The man, known only as Arthur to the barista on the corner, had grown accustomed to the peculiar rhythm of his life. Wake up, drink coffee, go to work, get tapped on the head, repeat. At first, it was infuriating, a violation of his space, his privacy, his very being. He would spin around ready to confront his assailant, but there was never anyone there, or at least no one obvious. Just the usual throng of people going about their day, oblivious to Arthur and the strange percussion of his life. He tried changing his routine. Different streets, different times. Nothing worked. The tap always found him, always that same sharp metallic ping against his skull. It was as if he were followed by an invisible drummer, keeping time with the absurdity of his existence. Arthur began to feel hunted, haunted. The world, once a place of simple routines, had become a stage for his own personal, unending thriller. It was in Palermo Park, on a day much like any other, that Arthur finally saw him. The man with the umbrella. He was utterly unremarkable. Average height, average build, a face lost in the crowd. His only distinguishing feature was a drab gray suit that seemed to absorb the light around it. The man walked with purpose, his eyes fixed on Arthur. Closer and closer, until he was within arm's reach. Arthur froze, his breath catching in his throat. This was it, the confrontation, the moment he would demand answers. But the man only paused briefly. He raised his umbrella, a plain black affair with a silver tip, and brought it down on Arthur's head. Tap. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Then, just as quickly, the man continued on his way, disappearing into the throng of parkgoers as if he were a phantom. Arthur stood there, stunned. The audacity, the casualness, it was infuriating. He wanted to scream, to chase after the man, to throttle him with his bare hands. But something held him back. Fear, perhaps, or maybe a strange, unsettling fascination. Arthur touched the spot where the umbrella had struck him. No pain, no mark. Just a dull ache and the lingering feeling of absurdity. He was trapped in a surreal nightmare, and the only other actor seemed to be a man in a gray suit with a peculiar habit. Arthur became obsessed. He couldn't let this stand. He had to know why. Who was this man? What had he done to deserve this bizarre daily assault? He began to follow the man in the gray suit, tailing him through the crowded streets like a detective in a low-budget film noir. But the man was always one step ahead. He moved with an uncanny awareness, his head constantly swiveling, his eyes scanning the crowd. It was as if he could sense Arthur's presence, a sixth sense tingling with the knowledge of being pursued. One rainy afternoon, Arthur managed to board the same bus as the man. He sat a few rows back, his heart pounding in his chest. This was his chance. He would confront the man, demand answers, and finally put an end to this 5-year torment. The bus lurched forward, and Arthur watched as the man rose from his seat and moved toward the exit. This was it. Arthur scrambled after him, pushing past startled passengers, his mind a jumble of anticipation and dread. As the bus screeched to a halt, the man in the gray suit slipped out the door and into the teeming street. Arthur followed, his breath ragged, his shoes slapping against the wet pavement. The chase was on. The man in the gray suit moved through the crowd with an almost preternatural grace, dodging pedestrians and weaving between cars, his umbrella held like a shield against the onslaught of the city. Arthur, less accustomed to the urban obstacle course, stumbled and cursed, his quarry pulling further and further away. He tried to call out, to shout his accusations, but his voice was lost in the cacophony of the city. The absurdity of it all struck him with full force. He was chasing a man with an umbrella through the streets, fueled by 5 years of pent-up frustration and a desperate need for answers. It was madness. Suddenly, Arthur tripped, his foot catching on a loose cobblestone. He crashed to the ground, his hands scraping against the rough pavement. As he lay there, winded and defeated, he saw the man in the gray suit disappear down a side street, swallowed by the shadows and the rain. A hand reached down and helped Arthur to his feet. He looked up, expecting to see a face full of concern or amusement. Instead, he was met with a look of blank indifference. It was the man in the gray suit. He held out Arthur's dropped wallet, his features unreadable. "You dropped this," the man said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the labyrinthine alleys, leaving Arthur standing there, bewildered and alone.